Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of The Badass and the Buddha. The purpose of our program is to have real honest and open conversations about relevant topics that affect all of us as human beings at some point in our life's journey, and also to create a community so you can enter into this dialogue with us. And I am joined today by with Alexis Williams. By the way, my name is Annie Fonte. And Alexis and I have known each other for about 20 years now. And we were on a walk about 6 months ago, and we were talking about how we'd come from such different backgrounds and ended up in the same place for the most part as far as our philosophy about living a full life and creating a life that we love. And so we decided it would be worthwhile having weekly conversations about random topics or topics that eventually that you'll help us decide and that we want to have a discussion about. And so I'm going to hand this off to Alexis right now and let her tell you how we came up with the name The Badass and the Buddha. Alexis, take it away.
Yes. So, Annie was so gracious. On my 60th birthday, she took me to an amazing lunch at the Rancho La Valencia. And we were sitting there talking, as she just said, even furthering the conversation as to how much we're so much alike, and yet we came from these different paths. And Annie has this amazing background with her farm girl and then going to Harvard and then just building this amazing house and all these wonderful things. And meanwhile, I was off in the Himalayas, Japan, and Southeast Asia trying to figure it all out. And she came up with this amazing name, and she just said that, wow, it looks like we're like the badass and the Buddha, and we kind of have a thing going here. So that's just how the name was born and how we came together.
Exactly, and we'll go into more of that eventually as we have these conversations with you about our backgrounds and a little deeper history about that, so we can share it with you. However, today we've randomly picked a topic that I'm sorry. My internet here at my house is a little dicey sometimes, so I just had a message that it was unstable. But anyway, we randomly picked a topic today to talk about, and it's really why do we compare ourselves to others, and what are some of the good things about that, because there are some, and what are some of the pitfalls of that. And I know, Alexis, you've done some research on this because there's really scientific research that's been done, and it talks somewhat about how the brain operates as well as to why we as humans compare ourselves to others. Can you share some of what you know about that?
Yeah, well, there's the social comparison, which is kind of what it's called. And the challenge lies in we either compare up or we compare down. And our tendency is to compare up. So we're always looking at people that are what we think are up to better things. They're on better vacations, they have better children, they have better educations, whatever this is better. And then we end up feeling a little deflated. Whereas on the other side of the coin, if we were to compare down, like for instance, I just came back from India. So I was able to see how what a beautiful country I live in, how much how much I have is amazing. So I was comparing down, and it allowed for gratitude. That's just one way to play with it, but that's how we do it. We either are comparing up or we're comparing down. The tendency is towards up. So we're always feeling worse. But again, if we were to look at how fortunate we are by comparing to, other things, I don't even think the word comparison is the best, but just noticing for sure. But I don't know. What do you think about that, Annie?
Well, I think oftentimes we use comparison to guide us in so we can use it to our advantage. For instance, if we compare ourselves to a peer at work who really is doing well and they seem to have really great presentation skills and they seem to be climbing up through their career path in a very appropriate and admirable way, we compare ourselves to them and we can take on and learn from them what attributes that takes. So I think that's a good comparison.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was agreeing. Positive side of comparing up.
Right. Or we can eventually look at that, and if we compare ourselves to them and we have an ideal of ourselves that is, I'll never be that. I'll never be that articulate. I'll never have Excel spreadsheets that beautiful. I'll never give presentations that are that well thought out. Then what can happen is we can start to, unfortunately, label these people with baggage that they didn't ask for. And we are basically making it up so we can feel better about ourselves. And that's where I think we get into a little bit of a danger zone.
Yeah. And so there's something that kind of struck me was this whole idea of comparing it even in and of itself, whereas we're always looking out to see how we are defined. And so instead of looking out, to look within, to come up with who we are and to get in alignment with ourselves and our purpose. And sometimes what we're comparing to is kind of like apples and oranges. We're not even in the same game as these people. And so when we connect into our own strengths, that's where we could compare in the positive and see where we want to get to.
Yes, and I think in today's society where there's so much access to social media and screens and digital technology, it's suicide rates in young people have increased fairly dramatically over the last several years, and depression rates have kind of toggled around a little bit on the uprise. And one of the reasons that I've understood in doing some of the reading that I've done is that we are comparing our vision of our reality to someone else's display of what isn't a reality. So of course, when we're on social media, we're not going to take a selfie of ourselves right first thing out of bed looking half haggard and our hair's a mess and no makeup and kind of tired from the night before. We're going to take beautiful pictures of ourselves, or the beautiful vacations we're on, or the beautiful homes we live in, or the great dinner we had with friends. That's what we're putting on social media. And in reality, that's not as realistic as I think we make it to be as an observer, and it's not as realistic as we make it to be as the person actually displaying the information on social media. So that's where I think another danger zone can be. And it concerns me because young kids don't quite have the resources in place, probably between the ages of when they start entering social media as young as 10 or 11 to 15 or 16 years old. So they don't have the resources to know the difference. And they sit in their room at night and they compare themselves to friends or other people on social media, or the model on the Vogue magazine, or the guy with the ripped abs on Men's Fitness magazine. And they can't distinguish that that's not a real vision of who they can be. And so then they start to compare themselves to that. And then that's when that downhill spiral can start of depression, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy enough, or I'll never be all that these folks are.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, speaking to the kids, that's like one whole topic. And then there's so much else. But I think what I learned so much from just looking at this topic was to defining what success and happiness really is for ourselves in all ways. So physically and financially and spiritually and mentally and emotionally, start getting connected as to who we are internally and what those values are for ourselves, so that instead of just taking things from the outside and taking it on as though that's reality, kind of maybe what you were speaking to, Annie, but coming from within and then living our life.
Yeah, it was probably, I don't know, maybe a month or two ago, I, as you do, was doing some reading. I do a lot of reading, and I came across something that Warren Buffett said. And for those of you who may not know who Warren Buffett is, he's probably one of the most wealthy individuals in our country. And he is an investor, if you will, and a businessman. And he said, do you want to have an inner scorecard or an outer scorecard? And his next line was, do you want to be the best lover in the world and have the outside world think you're the worst lover in the world? Or would you prefer to actually be the worst lover in the world, but have the outside world view you as the best lover in the world? I thought that was an interesting observation on his part, is if we're coming from this from our inner scorecard versus our outer scorecard, we're going to have a much different experience of what is outside of us.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then also how we start relating when we do actually get with real people, because we're talking about how we're influenced by the screen. how can we connect with others coming from that place versus the mask that we want to wear that we're really someone else. And it kind of just spirals all down, not being connected from within.
Yeah, and I think, really the game we can win is the game where we compare ourselves today or this morning to ourselves this afternoon or tomorrow. That's a game that we can win, because then we're focused on what our contribution in the world is and what our authenticity in the world is. The game that is going to always end up with a lot of hash marks in the lose side of the column is comparing ourselves to others. And the one thing that every single one of us as individuals can do better than the next guy, or I can do me a whole heck of a lot better than you can do me, Alexis. And you can do you a whole heck of a lot better than I can do you. And if we would just remember that no one does us better than we do, I think that will take us a long way of unplugging from the comparison and really staying focused and keep our feet planted in the good thing of, let me just work on me. Let me just compare myself to what my potential best self is. And then when I get to that place of what I thought was my best self, let me compare that to my next level of my potential best self. That keeps us out of the ditch, I think.
Yeah, and then I did something fun. It's called Strength Finders, and when I did the research for this, it was when we discover our strengths and we lead with our strengths, even though we still may compare up, that becomes more of a model for us, and it's more truthful, and we have more of a sense of rising the bar. Just kind of what you were just saying, Annie, but to know your strengths becomes a whole exploration, and that's where we should maybe be spending our times rather than, once again, looking out to see who we are. Really kind of start digging in and see who you are and what you're about and what your strengths are, and start leading with those and developing them, and then find people that can model them for you.
Yeah, that's great advice. And one of the questions that someone asked me as they knew we were going to be getting together and doing this today was, okay, well, I'm a little plugged into comparing myself to others. What are some tips, or what are some things I can do to stop doing that and live more peaceful and more content? So what would you suggest some of the daily practices would be of somebody who is currently plugged into a pretty high level of comparison to others, but they really do want to work on not doing that anymore?
Yeah, I sort of came up with some funny little things for me, and one was, so it's a mantra, but instead of looking without, look within, and getting into alignment with who I am and what my purpose is. And then is it strengthening or weakening me if I'm looking out, because you can start feeling that yucky feeling sometimes when you're starting to go, And then this was kind of fun for me. So there's the Mel Robbins 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So I was thinking, well, if I was going down the rabbit hole on, my iPhone or something, and then that would just 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 me out of it. But then there's a fun mindfulness thing, and it's a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And it's how to get back in your body and get present. And so it's looking around and see 5 things that you can visually see. And then 4 is 4 things you can actually hear. And then 3 things, wait, let me get this right. It's 5, 4, oh God.
That's okay. And what we'll do too is we'll put this in our show notes and our post notes when we post this video. So, okay, let's start our 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 again.
You're drinking in life through your senses. This is how we know we're alive, is through our senses. So it's just a way to get grounded. Then take a nice, good breath, and then ask yourself, what am I needing in this moment? What am I really needing? And start following your own lead. And then after that, take action, whatever that may be. But what I really liked about that START article, Annie, that you passed around was creating your own offline love list, because I think we forget some of the things that we really, really enjoy that are just available to us at any given time. And it was so kind of almost corny, but it was that Sound of Music song. These are a few of my favorite things. And I started thinking of a list of that just for myself on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think one of the things we could all improve on in our daily living is to be more intentional in our use of technology, because I think it's easy to get caught up in just trolling through Facebook or trolling through Instagram, and then that's where you can tend to get pulled into this whole comparison thing, because you start to see lives that are somewhat attractive out there, and even though you're smart enough to know they're probably not realistic, you do get pulled into wanting to compare yourself to that. And the other thing that I often will tell people, part of comparison is your self-talk. And I say to people, when you are having self-talk, I always encourage them to ask the question, is what I'm saying about myself true? Is what I'm saying about myself changing this situation for the better? And is what I'm saying about myself serving me in a positive way? If the answer to any one of those questions is no, then we know we need to start having a different discussion with ourselves.
Yeah, that's great, Annie. Yeah, so that whole idea of choice when we're going to use technology above and beyond, I noticed I had a dentist appointment, and actually I've done this 3 times now. I've forgotten my phone, which I find very interesting, but I didn't have what I was trying to grab to, do this. So it just became a nice time in the waiting room, because I actually struck up a conversation with my fellow person there and had a whole different experience. So
right.
I guess it's just, a time to realize that we have choice when we have our technology and when we don't, and then actually taking advantage of that when we don't.
Which reminds me, you told me of a story when you got back from India where you were going to some kind of an event that was going on, and you, not intentionally, but you forgot your phone back at where you were staying. But as a result, some really amazing things happened. Why don't you share that with our listeners?
Yeah, so I was in India on an amazing journey with some ladies, and we were going off to, it was a sacred journey. So we were doing, it was a formal celebration. And I had left our little inn that we were staying in. I forgot the phone. It was our first time out, so everyone had their phone and they were all ready to take pictures, which is fantastic. I didn't have my phone, so I was standing there. And as it would be, I was asked to be part of this. I don't quite understand how that happened, but I was standing there and I was asked to be part of this really sacred thing. And they had me lighting candles and waving large flames around and throwing flowers. And it was such an amazing time for me. And so everyone was asking, how did you get chosen for that? And I was just saying, I don't know. I was just there, and, they captured me in that moment. So.
And those people who asked you that were probably comparing themselves to you, the one who got invited to the ceremony, and they didn't because they were so busy with their phone.
Yeah, it's the way it is.
Yeah. Sure. Okay, well, I think that was a good discussion about comparison, and I think we were able to share some good tips with folks about how to lessen your human nature is to compare, and like we said earlier, there's some benefit to that, but how to lessen the negative side effects of comparing yourself to others or other things. And we will continue to do these conversations on a weekly basis. Right now we're recording them. Eventually we would like to do them live and invite you in to be in conversation with us during these. We're going to keep them between 20 and 30 minutes long. And if you have any topics that you would like us to talk about, please get in touch with us. We will put all of our information in the post notes when we post this video on Facebook to begin with, and other social media as time goes on. So Alexis, I think for our first episode, we did okay. Do you have any parting words for our listeners?
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Annie.
You're welcome. Okay, everybody, go out there and make it a great day.